My name is Oksana Shevchenko, and I'm 32 years old. 3 years ago, I was an art curator at the Kharkiv Regional Museum, organizing exhibitions of contemporary Ukrainian artists. Today, I run an art therapy program for war survivors, using brushes and canvases to rebuild minds fractured by violence. My silent galleries have been replaced by improvised studios and bomb shelters. And my curatorship has transformed into a mission to prove that art can heal what medicine cannot reach. I was born in Kharkiv, a city of wide parks and constructivist architecture where culture and science always walked hand in hand. My father was a literature professor at the university, my mother an icon restorer in Orthodox churches. They taught me that art isn't luxury, it's human necessity. The language that exists when words fail. Growing up, I was always the child with paint-stained hands. At 18, I entered the Academy of Fine Arts. At 25, I was already working at the museum, creating bridges between emerging artists and the public. Oksana, you have the gift of making people see beyond the surface, said my mentor, Irina Petrenko, the museum director. Art isn't on the walls, it's in what it awakens in those who observe it. I believe that. My life was vernissages, catalogs, conversations about color and form. My identity was built on beauty, on creating spaces where art transformed perceptions. February 24th, 2022, destroyed everything. Kharkiv became one of Ukraine's most heavily bombed cities. Missiles hit residential neighborhoods daily. The museum closed, its works evacuated to safe locations in the West. On March 1st, a Russian attack hit Freedom Square while I was helping evacuate families from my building. The blast wave threw me against a parked car. I woke up in the hospital with severe head trauma, 3 fractured ribs, and shrapnel lodged in my left leg, but the physical injury was secondary. I began having intense nightmares, reliving the attack repeatedly, waking up screaming, unable to distinguish past from present. Loud noises paralyzed me. I trembled uncontrollably in open spaces. The diagnosis came quickly: severe post-traumatic stress disorder. You need psychiatric treatment, said Dr. Natalia Kovalenko, the hospital psychiatrist. Medication and cognitive therapy. I tried. Antidepressants that left me numb. Therapy sessions where reliving trauma in words only intensified the panic. Nothing worked. I spent 3 months in a mental darkness that made the physical injury irrelevant. I couldn't work, sleep, exist normally. My identity, competent woman, respected professional, had shattered along with my body. The transformation began by accident. In May 2022, transferred to a rehabilitation center in Lviv. I found an abandoned room full of art supplies, paints, brushes, dusty canvases donated by some NGO. One afternoon, during a particularly violent panic attack, I entered that room seeking silence. I saw the paints and, without thinking, opened a tube of cadmium red. I started painting. I had no plan, technique, or objective. I just spread color on the canvas, angry red blotches, deep blacks, torn whites. I painted for 2 hours, lost in instinctive movements. When I stopped, I realized something extraordinary. For the first time in months, the intrusive thoughts had ceased. During those 2 hours, my traumatized mind had found peace. Dr. Kovalenko noticed the change. What happened? You seem different. I painted, I answered, surprised by my own steady voice. She studied my face. Art therapy. There's extensive research on its effects on PTSD. Artistic creation activates parts of the brain that bypass verbal trauma circuits. You literally process your experience without needing to verbalize it. It worked better than 3 months of medication. For some patients, it does. Oksana, you have training in art. Have you thought about structuring this therapeutically? The idea seemed absurd. I was a curator, not a therapist. But something had changed in that room, a connection between my broken identity as an art professional and my desperate need for healing. I began researching. Art therapy was an established field used with war veterans, trauma survivors, psychiatric patients. It combined psychotherapeutic techniques with creative process, allowing people to express experiences that words couldn't capture, and Ukraine was full of. Traumatized people needing exactly that. I proposed to Dr. Kovalenko, creating a pilot art therapy program at the Rehabilitation Center. We have hundreds of patients with PTSD, civilians, soldiers, children. Medication and verbal therapy don't work for everyone. Let me try something different. She agreed with skepticism. 2 sessions weekly, 10 patients. We'll document results. I prepared the abandoned room, organized materials, created workspaces, established basic protocols. Without formal training in art therapy, I trusted intuition, create a safe environment where trauma could be externalized through images, not words. The first session in June 2022 brought together 10 people, 6 women, 4 men, ages 19 to 67, all with diagnosed PTSD. Some had lost family members. Others survived bombings, torture, forced displacement. We're not here to create beautiful art, I explained. We're here to put on canvas what's trapped inside you. There's no right or wrong, only honesty. The first minutes were tense. People staring at blank canvases, afraid to begin. Then Helena, 44, grabbed black paint and began covering her canvas with violent movements. Tears streamed as she painted, processing the loss of her twin children killed in a school bombing. Others followed. Mikola, a former soldier, painted recurring nightmares in red abstractions. Svetlana, 23, created fragmented images of her destroyed home in Mariupol. For 2 hours, the room filled with concentrated silence, broken only by brushes against canvas. When we finished, participants looked exhausted but relieved, as if they carried less weight. I managed to release something that was suffocating me, Helena said. I could never talk about my children without collapsing, but I painted about them, and I survived. The sessions continued. I observed patterns emerging. Participants started with dark colors, blacks, reds, grays, expressing anger and pain. After weeks, lighter colors appeared, blues, greens, yellows signaling emotional processing. People who couldn't verbalize trauma created visceral images. Soldiers painted battles. Mothers painted lost children. Torture survivors painted physical pain that doctors couldn't measure. And gradually, they improved. It wasn't magical cure. But PTSD symptoms diminished, fewer nightmares, fewer panic attacks, greater ability to function daily. Dr. Kovalenko documented everything. Impressed with results. Oksana, you're doing something important. This needs to expand. In September 2022, with support from international NGOs and Ukraine's Ministry of Health, we founded Palette of Hope, Ukraine's first dedicated art therapy center for war survivors. We occupied an old building in Lviv, transforming it into therapeutic studios. I recruited volunteers, artists, psychologists, students, training them in basic art therapy techniques. The program offered free sessions to anyone affected by war. No requirements beyond willingness to try. Hundreds came. Soldiers with amputated limbs painting lost bodies. Children who witnessed violence drawing monsters representing fear. Women raped by Russian soldiers creating images of bodily recovery. Each person brought a unique story of destruction, and each found in art a tool for reconstruction. We developed specific approaches for soldiers, ceramics and sculpture manual work that reconnected mind and body. Particularly effective for amputees, relearning coordination. For children, drawing and collage playful expression, allowing trauma processing without verbal re-traumatization for sexual violence survivors, abstract painting externalization of pain without need for literal representation for displaced elderly, watercolor and memory recreation of lost homes as process of grief, and acceptance. One case marked me deeply. Daria was 17 when Russian soldiers invaded her village in Bucha. They executed her father and brother in front of her, then kept her in a basement for 2 weeks before Ukrainian forces liberated the region. When she arrived at the center, 3 months after rescue, Daria didn't speak. Absolutely mute trauma had shut down her verbal capacity. Psychiatrists tried everything. Nothing worked. I placed art materials in front of her, no instructions, no pressure. For 2 weeks, she just stared. In the third week, she picked up pastel chalk and began drawing. They weren't beautiful images. Distorted figures, scenes of violence, graphic representations of torture. She drew compulsively, sheet after sheet, exercising demons through lines on paper. After a month, she began crying during sessions, first step of emotional processing. After 2 months, she whispered her first word, "Thank you." After 6 months, Daria was speaking normally, planning to resume studies, creating art that transformed trauma into testimony. "You saved me," she said. "No, you saved yourself. I just provided tools." The program grew exponentially. In 2023, we expanded to Kharkiv, Dnipro, and Kyiv, serving over 800 people monthly. We established partnerships with military hospitals, refugee centers, and veterans organizations. Training new art therapists became essential. I created an intensive 3-month course combining psychological theory, artistic techniques, and war-specific trauma-informed care. Many therapists were themselves survivors. They viscerally understood what patients faced. The war continued. New traumas arrived daily. But our center became refuge, a place where pain could be transformed into color, where traumatic silence found visual expression. In 2024, we presented results at an international trauma psychology conference in Geneva. Researchers were impressed. 73% of participants reported significant reduction in PTSD symptoms after 3 months of art. Therapy rate comparable to pharmacological treatments, but without side effects. "This should be standard protocol for war trauma," said Dr. James Peterson, an American psychiatrist specializing in veterans. "You're proving what we suspected. Trauma lives in the body and needs to be released physically, not just verbally." The recognition was validating, but my motivation remained personal. Each person finding healing through art was proof that destruction wasn't final destiny. My own journey continued parallel. I still have PTSD. Sudden noises startle me, attack anniversaries bring anxiety, but I learned to manage through the same techniques I teach. I paint regularly, not to exhibit, but to process. My canvases document transformation from the chaotic blotches of 2022 to more integrated compositions today. My art evolved alongside my recovery. Last month, I visited Kharkiv for the first time since evacuation. The city remains under frequent bombardment, but life persists. My old museum partially reopened, exhibiting works that survived the war. Irina Petrenko, now with completely white hair, hugged me tightly. "You found your true calling. I always knew art was your language. We just didn't know it would be the language of healing." I proposed to the museum hosting a special exhibition, works created by art therapy program participants. These people aren't professional artists, but their creations have power that traditional art rarely achieves. It's visual testimony of survival. Irina agreed immediately. The exhibition, From Darkness to Light, Art Therapy in Times of War, opened in August 2024. 50 works by program participants, paintings, sculptures, installations, each accompanied by brief text explaining the creator's journey. Daria exhibited a series of self-portraits, showing transformation from silent victim to recovered young woman. Helena created a memorial installation to her lost children using personal objects and painting. Mikola sculpted a wood series representing soldiers carrying invisible burdens. Thousands visited. Many cried. Some recognized their own trauma reflected in the works. Dot and dozens sought out the program after seeing the exhibition. Realizing art could offer a path other therapies hadn't, a critic wrote, "This isn't an exhibition about art. It's about human resistance." Each work is a victory over destruction, proof that creativity survives even in the most brutal contexts. Today, Palette of Hope serves over 1,500 people monthly in 6 cities. We expanded to include music therapy, drama therapy, and dance movement therapy, recognizing that creative healing takes multiple forms. My role has changed. I still facilitate sessions, weekly direct connection with participants. Keeps me anchored in the mission, but I spend more time training therapists, developing curriculum, and securing funding for a program dependent on donations. Yesterday, I met Yulia Bondar, 28, who lost her sight in a Mariupol bombing. She sat in the studio, hands trembling, facing a canvas she couldn't see. How can I paint if I can't see? I placed brushes in her hands. Close your eyes. Feel the texture of the paint, the movement of the brush, the surface of the canvas. Art doesn't only live in vision, it lives in touch, in movement, and intention. She painted for an hour, creating an abstract composition through pure sensation. When we finished, tears streamed from her unseeing eyes. I created something. For the first time since losing my sight, I created something. You always had creativity inside you. We just found a new path for it. The war continues. Missiles still fall. Bodies and minds continue being broken in ways that seem irreparable. But in studios across Ukraine, survivors are discovering that brushes can rebuild what bombs destroyed. That identity isn't tied to intact body or untraumatized mind, but to the courage to express pain and transform it into something new. Tomorrow, I'll facilitate a session with a new group, 12 newly amputated soldiers beginning their recovery journey. Their hands will tremble picking up brushes. Some will cry. Others will be angry at the simplicity of just painting when their lives have been shattered, but I'll be there, sharing my own journey, showing that a woman who almost lost her mind to trauma found salvation in paint and canvas. I am Oksana Shevchenko, art curator transformed into art therapist, war survivor, healing facilitator. I am proof that human creativity is stronger than destruction. My canvases are ready. The studio is waiting, and there are so many lives still to rebuild.